Hey everybody, I'm not going to be in Monday or Tuesday again, so I just wanted to go over what the day's work is for this block. If you head over to modules and scroll down to Monday, Tuesday, December 7th through the 8th, there's going to be some instruction and resources, and then there's going to be 3 assignments to work on today. Before we start with that, I wanted to show you this graphic organizer that I made that I think will help you keep everything that we've talked about in one place, and feel free to use this on any of these assignments. So far we've talked about 2 different types of inheritance. We've talked about simple inheritance and complex inheritance. When we say simple inheritance, we're thinking about Mendel's pea plants. They're either tall or short, the flowers are either purple or white. There's a dominant gene and there's a recessive gene. And the rule is the dominant will always overpower the recessive allele in the phenotype, so in the physical expression of that gene. The recessive is only going to show up if the genotype is homozygous recessive. Remember, there's 2 types. There's homozygous, which means the same, and there's heterozygous, which means different. So that's simple inheritance. Unfortunately, when we're talking about genetics and more complex things in peas like humans, we have some more complex patterns. The words that you need to remember for these are going to be polygenic traits, and that is when the physical expression or a phenotype is influenced by more than one gene. So your example is a genotype that's ABC and not just A's. So think about our skin color is polygenic, our hair color, our height. We're not just either tall or short. We're not either 4 feet or 7 feet. We're everything in between. So that phenotype is influenced by multiple genes. Then that term is polygenic. Poly meaning multiple and genic meaning genes. The next one we talked about was incomplete dominance. That's when 2 alleles blend together to make a third phenotype. So you have a red, a white, and a pink. And that pink flower, if you remember, is going to be your third phenotype. That's the blend of the 2 other alleles. And you can see them written with either superscript, like you have in the example right here, or with the 2 the big R and the little r. Remember, you always assume simple inheritance when you're doing a problem unless they specify that it's an incomplete gene or a codominant gene. So the next one is codominance, and that's when both alleles are expressed equally in the phenotype. So think about polka dots. You don't see in the example here, we've got red, white, and then red and white. It's not blended together like incomplete. We would see red with white spots or white with red spots. Think about Dalmatians or cows that have that are black and white. That's a codominant gene. The next one is multiple alleles. That's when there are more than just the 2 alleles for that gene. So normally we work with like big A, little a, or big B, little b. But when we have multiple alleles, then there's going to be more than just those 2 options. And the example for that is our blood types. You can either be A, B, AB, or O. A and B are codominant to each other, and O is recessive. So the only way you're going to have an O blood type is if you inherit 2 recessive genes from your parents. The last one is sex-linked inheritance, and that is when a trait is influenced by a gene found on a sex chromosome. These are typically going to be found on the X chromosomes. So these are all the different genotypes you can have. This female here is going to not, let's say that this is a dominant gene. So if you have that capital A, let's say this is a recessive. If you have a little a, then you're going to be affected by this, whatever this disease or characteristic may be. So this female here is affected. This female is not. And this female is a carrier. So she has a dominant allele that overrides that recessive one, but she can still pass that recessive one on to a male offspring. And the reason that males are more typically affected by sex-linked patterns of inheritance is because they only get one X. Females, if they inherit this recessive X, they still have another opportunity to have that dominant and cancel out whatever that recessive gene codes for. But males, if they get stuck with an X and a recessive gene attached to it, they only have a Y. So they don't have something that could potentially take that away. So make sure you use this chart when you're doing these 3 assignments. It'll really help you out. You can work with people next to you. Remember, there is a pandemic, so be smart. The first thing you're going to work on is monohybrid crosses, and this is just a bunch of problems dealing with SpongeBob. So when you open it up, you're going to have the link to the assignment like normal. You'll click on it and open it up. Read the directions. Up here, you're going to figure out, is this heterozygous or homozygous? So this one here, 2 capital T's, they're the same, so obviously it's homozygous, so I'd put HO. Big B, little b right here is heterozygous because they're different, so I'd put HE. Next question says, which of the genotypes in number 1 would be considered purebreds? So purebreds are something with 2 of the same alleles. So anything that's homozygous is a purebred. Anything that's heterozygous is a hybrid. Next, you're going to figure out the phenotype. They tell you yellow body color is dominant to blue. So knowing these genotypes, what color would those sponges be? And then you're going to go through Patrick's information, and then you're going to answer some questions about SpongeBob and Sponge Susie. Apparently they hit it off and they have kids, and so you're figuring out using a Punnett square what those potential offspring would be. Then you'll do it again for Patrick and Patty. And then this one down here is pretty funny. You find out that Squidward's family is slightly racist because they brag about being purebred. And of course this is all made up, but I think the way that this is worded is pretty ridiculous and funny. You'll do the same thing for Squidward and answer the questions down there. It's number 7, number 8, there's one in here about Mr. Krabs. Once you finish the monohybrid, the next assignment is dihybrid. So this one is now looking at crossing multiple genes and not just one. So if you remember our first learning check, we did monohybrid crosses. The second learning check, we did dihybrid crosses. So again, you'll click on this blue link. Everything in here is talking about a dihybrid cross. So now we're looking at multiple alleles and not just one. And then the last assignment is that sex-linked genetics. So we're taking everything we've learned and putting it all together. So you'll click on this link, you'll submit it here. This is going over the sex-linked. So you'll have to figure out, is it a dominant or recessive, and which sex chromosome is it located on, X or Y? If you manage to get through all of that in one day, if there's anything that you're confused about, don't freak out. I will be back before you take the test. So we will go over all of this together. This is just a practice to see if you can do all the things that we've been talking about. The next time I see you, you'll have your non-Mendelian learning check. So this is going to be over pedigrees and sex-linked inheritance. We'll go over the review, and what we'll also do this day is we'll break up into 3 groups. So who needs help with monohybrid crosses, who doesn't understand dihybrid crosses, and who doesn't understand sex-linked and pedigrees. We'll work on the review together, and that'll put us into the end of this week and next week, which will be our summative. And then that'll be it for the semester. So these 2 grades here are the last 2 things going into the grade book for this term. So if you haven't taken every opportunity to take these learning checks, you need to do that and make sure you study for the summative. Remember, the summative is combining 3 different topics: monohybrid, dihybrid, and non-Mendelian. So you need to go over all of those. If you're worried about that, you already have access to the review, and you have Kahoots and Quizlets in here in the Unit 7 notes and resources.